Hi, I'm Jutta Becker-Ritterspach, and sitting now here also at FU at Free University in Berlin. And I've working with Gregory for SER now for the last years, first as an assistant for SER, and now since this year I'm the managing editor for SER. And you can come to me if you have questions about publishing, about the promotion of articles, about we have usually a post every week on at least one article which is newly published in SER. So if you have any questions, you can always come to me, or if there's something else.
All of you, and Jutta, there's a chat function going on, so so far we're not many people, so please you can speak out anytime or raise a hand, or if you're pondering your question and would rather write something in the chat, we'll pick it up. And yeah, still hoping some other people will join shortly. We've been doing this session at SASE for some years, and every year has been really different. We've had huge audience, we've had very small audience, we've had a lot of PhD students come in, and then we've also had very senior people in the field come and ask me a very pointed question: why doesn't SER do more of this or that? So we've had everything over the years, and nice to see you, and whichever kinds of thing you'd like to know, you're welcome. So I prepared just a little bit of background information and some updates. This might be 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but not longer than that. And Nina's gonna watch the watch and keep me to that. But I'd like to tell you just a little bit of updated information about the journal. And yeah, but you can ask questions directly to these points. So I do have couple of PowerPoints here. So if you can see my screen, yes. Okay. So yeah, to tell you a little bit about what it's like to publish in SER. Well, SER is a journal, obviously. It's now gone to being an online only journal. So we had our last print issue at the end of 2020, and this issue, which is not yet online, but any minute will be the first virtual only issue. We are a fairly small team made up of chief editor Bruno and Nina, you've met. We have Patrick Emmenegger, from political scientist from St. Gallen University, Ken Holin, who's a sociologist from University of Texas, and we're currently have one gap in our team, but we usually have basically a team that mixes together several disciplines, economics, sociology, political science, and who knows what the future will bring. But I think these three disciplines are certainly very important ones in SASE and for the journal. And Jutta, who you also met, who is in the back office, but also in the front line of the social media. Yeah. So this I've said, please interject your questions anytime. I like this quote from a rock musician, Robert Fripp, a British guitarist. The science is in knowing, the art is in perceiving. Why do I bring this? I said, well, all of us have training in science, right? Doing social science, and like, how do you like know things about the social world? And probably everyone here is like pretty good at it and has a lot of background. And maybe what we may or may not have training in is in art, in this case, the art of writing, right? So writing down our research has a certain element of art to it. And it's like, how can, through writing, how can I help you, like an audience, perceive the things that I believe I know, right? And I think especially in social science, maybe more than in some of the natural sciences, you know, that there is an artistic element to this, in the sense of we all have different vocabularies coming from different disciplines. Some disciplines are more high paradigm and they use very standardized vocabularies. Other disciplines less so. And in SCR, we're kind of in an interdisciplinary space. And the kind of task in writing an article is to like help connect, you know, that kind of different audience and help people kind of see the insights that we bring through science. So these are just conjectures on my side, but I like to think that this publication process, there is a process of writing behind it and trying to address the particular kind of audience and objectives of SER. So how can you find out more about SER? Well, you can look on the editorial policy of SER, which has not changed for a long time, I think, because it's pretty good. So we're about the social political foundations of economy, analytical, political, and moral questions at the intersection of economy and society, and really looking at economic processes in relation to social relations, institutions, politics, cultural values, and so forth. And there's kind of a, if you think a bit in like a quantitative social scientist, you might say, okay, what does this mean, this like intersection? And you could say, well, I put some social variables and I regress them on economic ones, like, I don't know, political parties and GDP growth, or we could do it the other way around. You could say, okay, I regress GDP growth on democracy or something like this. And this would be socio-economics. And in a certain extent, yes, in a minimal definition, that might be true. But I think the aim of SER as a journal has been a little bit going a level deeper than that, and to say, okay, economic processes themselves are also social ones. And this social regulation of economies is, of course, always a political process, as we know in the domain of political economy. So really trying to more find ways to kind of entangle the understanding of economy with other social and political things. So by nature, I would say it's a kind of interdisciplinary venture, right? And we have readers who are from these different disciplines, and I'll say more about that later, but it's really about trying to find something. If you're coming from, say, sociology and you work in economic sociology, I mean, it's fine to be very within that paradigm, but when you're writing for SCR, you also want to kind of like take account of like reaching out to what does the economics literature say? Are there political scientists who like resonate on this topic? And trying to like start a conversation. It doesn't mean that we're going to be in the perfect middle ground, blending all these disciplines always, but like, let's have a good party, you know, like let's talk together and engage with each other. So this is kind of like how I have understood the policy of the journal, or its kind of mission statement. And I guess from that, I put a conjecture to you, a proposition that SCR is a kind of a generalist journal, right? It's very broad in scope. And actually, when I started at SCR, I thought, oh, we're like somehow in this subfield of socioeconomics. And then I realized I was thinking about it kind of like inverted backwards way. And it's a very huge scope kind of journal, and in a way we an umbrella for like a lot of different subfields. And so that the trick of publishing is like you want a paper that's competent and strong in its subfield, that people would recognize the quality and you really in the literature of that, but that kind of like sending the signal out to the other disciplines beyond that. So in a, if I was like a PhD student advisor and I would ask that kind of rude question that, I don't know if you have like PhD committees in the US to ask this kind of rude question, but, why is my finding X interesting even for people who don't study X? And when I got asked that as a PhD student, I was insulted because I'm like, but I study X, like, of course it's, everyone wants, is interested in that, of course, but but it's just kind of like making this kind of gesture. So there's a lot of freedom in SCR publications. I think it's a journal that can take some risks. It can maybe find some papers that just like don't fit so comfortably in other journals, and then it can be like a home for those papers. But that, like with any freedom, there's some responsibility to, okay, like try and engage. And if we just have a paper that goes through all the sociology of something and completely ignores the economics literature, that's kind of not quite in the spirit of the journal, right? And so, yes, we're coming from a discipline, but can we extend out? And the thing it can bring you, and I discovered something interesting 2 days ago, but the interesting thing about it can maybe extend your audience for your work a little bit, so that you can also reach a new audience. And in case I forget to say it later, I come to the impact factor, which came out again like 2 days ago. It's always like right around the time of SASE, but I was looking at SCR is quite low on self-citations, so the journal doesn't like cite itself so much, but the SCR is cited by so many other journals. There's not really one journal that's like the sister journal of SCR. And I always kind of wondered about that. And then suddenly I just realized, yes, it's because, we have all these different disciplines. And so the impact is also kind of spread out, across many more different journals. Like most journals have 3 or 4 other journals. They have a huge number of self-citations, and there's 3 or 4 other big ones that are in the same cluster. And SEO is kind of not like that. It's very interesting. Getting into too much detail. So yeah, people like to see this, maybe the number of submissions. We've had like kind of a decade of like a lot of growth, and people were kind of interested in what happened during the COVID time, and the submissions dropped a little bit. So I don't know if this is like a secular slowing down of growth, right? Which happens. There's not an unlimited number of people who do socioeconomics in the world, but anyway, we're around 500 submissions, and of these we have an acceptance ratio of about 10%. But you'll see that we have this reject without review category, so we get a lot of submissions, and I can say more about that later, that we desk reject. This is kind of a quick but painful thing to get back, just papers that don't really fit the profile of the journal, that are maybe more a little bit in their subfield, maybe very good paper, but given this high number of submissions, we can't like take in everything. So we're trying to find the papers that are really don't fit in other journals. So if you make it past that, the rejection rate, the acceptance ratio is a little bit nicer. So around 15-20% of the reviewed papers. So yeah, so there's some more figures here. I'm not going to talk through all of this table, just to say that maybe we know that time is the precious commodity for authors, for reviewers, for editors, for everybody, and we really try hard to be fast. And in the 2020, we're not quite as fast as we have been in the past years. It's been a bit of a difficulty to get reviewers on board, and reviewers have been more likely to kind of drop out during the process. Something happens, so it's been a bit of a challenge in this last year or so. I think 2021's already getting a bit better, but then people have backlogs of things. So I think we'll get back to this speedy decision time, but this got a bit slow. Usually, I would say that we aim around, 3 months for a reviewed paper to get back, which I think is kind of in line with other journals, and this crept up a little bit. So anyway, if you came here to say, when do I get the decision on my paper? Yeah, it's on my desk and you'll get it very soon. But it's been a little bit of a tough year. But I wanted just to say this is really important for us, because we know it's very important to all of you who are submitting papers. So 2 days ago, we got to this impact factor, which people also seem to care about. The impact factor itself went up again, so it's 4.443. I don't know why they use so many decimal points. Let's call it 4.4. And this is the citations of articles published in 2020 to the things that came out 1 and 2 years ago. So it's a little small window of a thing. The 5-year impact factor is always going to be bigger, because you have like a larger, social science is a little bit slow, and it sometimes takes a little while for things to get cited in published work and so forth. But we've been very proud of the ranking. It seems that other journals went up a little bit last year as well. So our ranking went down a little bit, but I think very respectful. But we've been an upward trajectory with the overall impact factor. And we would rank better if you didn't include the self-citations of journals. So that's why I was looking at that. This is just important. We're proud that SCO is recognized as a very good journal in different fields, so that those of you who are going for tenure or young scholars can really put it in your CV, and hopefully your dean will go like, good job, and that's tough to publish there, and it will translate to some career rewards for you to share your work with this community. Yeah, how are we doing? Questions so far? Things I have next a few things about like tips and tricks for publishing, or like things that go wrong in publication, but maybe it's a good time to slow down. Yeah, John, please.
Yes. Hi. I am muted there. Okay. How's everybody? Okay. Basically, my question is that I'm thinking of submitting, and my research is in the intersection of finance, sociology, and politics. It's a theory of financial crises. Mm-hmm. And I thought that this was probably the top journal where it could, accommodate, that interdisciplinary approach that I did. The paper itself is theoretical, and I'm still editing it. And then there's a practical version where I did some case studies, like 4 or 5, where I looked at specific crises. And one of the key ones was the 2007-8 financial crisis. So that's the seminal case that goes. So the paper is the theoretical, and then we have the practical, how it's applied. Is it possible to submit 2 papers at the same time? Just because one is theory, one is the practical application of the theory. And I didn't know if that, so that's my question basically.
Yeah. I mean, we do kind of take I suppose it's hard to kind of answer in the abstract. There's not like a policy per se about that. I mean, I guess you have to think about, you know, are the contributions of each paper, you know, highly distinct, or are they kind of like a, you know, part one and part two, and they're like kind of overlapping a lot. You know, we obviously, you know, try to focus on the articles with the kind of broadest impact and that speak to those broader audiences and have the biggest contribution, whatever you want to understand under big, right? So a little bit I would be, I don't know, like, I guess the question, what, you know, it may be also for you if it's like better to submit to different journals with different specializations and so forth. It has happened like a couple of times that I suddenly got like 2 papers kind of simultaneously from the same authors, and again, without prejudicing what your particular case and the particular merits of your paper. It could be to say, okay, let's like review one of these, you know, kind of first, and see how we go with it. And then sometimes if you have a successful paper and then there's like a follow-up paper, then it's like can be more of a inviting thing for editors than kind of having 2 simultaneously, where you kind of like, from our point of view, it's like, who are the best reviewers? And if both papers would have the same reviewers, then I'm already kind of occupying those reviewers with paper 1, and then I tend to don't have them for the paper 2 simultaneously. So that it's kind of like, we think a little bit in those practical terms. So, but I'm not sure, like,
so it's better submit the theoretical first and then see how it goes, and then later on follow up with maybe the practical version. You know, either with this journal or another journal. That's fine. It's just that at the moment.
Just add a little bit to that point. So just to say what you can or cannot submit. You can submit many papers. That's not an issue, that we don't want to see multiple papers from single authors. The question more would be to send in a paper that is best aligned with our mission, that presents your best work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should send the theoretical paper in first, because somehow theory precedes empirics. It's you and your view, and maybe circulating these papers to a few colleagues. What would they advise is the best way to proceed? I will say that for theoretical papers, it is somewhat hard to just publish a theoretical paper. I think you would be well served as others to look at what we have published in the past and find some papers that seem like, maybe not on the content itself, but as a model would be like your paper, and then make a decision based on that too. So I just wanted to put in a caveat that it's not necessarily, theoretical paper first, because somehow it's theoretical and then empirical, but what is your best paper? And, in which ways did you divide what you present in one or the other? If it comes from a broader work, that's not necessarily how articles are written. Sometimes some parts from one need to be put in to bolster the other parts. Yes. And so some of these decisions, I would say, are still up for you to decide, and getting others to weigh in might be a good idea. Okay. Your colleagues and others who have published in SCR probably. Great. Yeah. But I didn't mean to cut it if you have a follow-up. I am mindful though that we have some other slides. So, if there's a follow-up maybe in chat, or if you can wait for a second round of questions.
Thank you.
Yes, so maybe one or two other small things that I like to tell, like SCR does aspire to have a kind of global scope. It's certainly an international journal. Of course, maybe not surprising that a lot of submissions come from Europe, North America, and Asia has been kind of like creeping up. And we also are very interested in submissions from other parts of the world, and we've had a kind of small but steady stream of submissions from Latin America, South America, and I think we have in this, is it in the issue 1, the Nicaragua? Yeah, we have actually 2 papers about the very small country of Nicaragua coming in the January 2021 issue that are really nice papers. So yeah, we're interested in soliciting submissions from new parts of the world and so forth. A couple other things on the logistics of submitting and when you get your paper published. We have, I think, a quite good infrastructure of support from SASE itself and from OUP. So after acceptance and the kind of copy editing, papers go into the advanced access online quite quickly, just in a few days. And we've been working to do authors some service to promote your papers. There's different ways that happens, like email, table of contents alerts, virtual special issues that we just had one recently, which are kind of collections of older and newer papers, which are sort of represented in a different context. There's a blog from Oxford University Press, and Jutta, who you met, has been really doing a great job with to make the journal also social media presence on Facebook and Twitter. Recently, Twitter's kind of emerging. I heard it's going crazy during this conference, the whole SASE Twitter. But we try to encourage you to, when your paper comes out, to kind of engage with social media, to kind of broaden the audience and impact of your work. And we're really happy to work with authors, on that. And it may be that Jutta reaches out to you, but you don't need to wait, because if you have ideas and things, there's a lot I think we can do through the OUP connections and through the infrastructure of SASE to promote work. Sometimes people are interested in these special formats of the journal. There's a few beyond the kind of standard research article, state-of-the-art review pieces, which are very nice things. These are kind of similar to the, if say like the annual review of sociology or the Journal of Economic Perspectives, picking a topic that's a very SCR kind of topic domain and doing a kind of overview and critical evaluation of what do we know about the state of knowledge of a field. These articles are really nice. They often get cited quite a lot, like as other review journals. And if you're interested in submitting these, you can just submit them without any invitation, but you're very welcome to contact me or some of the editors to kind of say, might you be interested in that? And if I say yes, the paper is still going to go out for a kind of review, because we want to view them still as kind of peer-reviewed papers. But we're very happy to kind of like, before you maybe go through the whole effort of drafting it for the journal, to contact us, and maybe we can give some advice or say, oh no, it really doesn't fit or something. But this is a really nice format to get published in SCR and have some impact. We have a few other things like book review symposia, which mostly come out of the conference. So if your question is, how do I get my book reviewed in SCR? We don't have a kind of normal short book reviews, but it's really given an outlet to things at the SASE conference, these author meets critics sessions. Not every session goes into the journal, but we try to do a fair representation of these things. And certainly if your work is being discussed at SASE, and you're welcome to reach out to us, or maybe we reach out to you. And a kind of less frequently used but really nice format is also a kind of not peer-reviewed thing, a discussion forum. And these are very free-form things that we've had from time to time over the years. And these are things that are basically based sometimes in panels at SASE, like round table type of discussions, but sometimes it's just somebody pitches an idea to us. And these are kind of trying to bring SCR into maybe a new area of discussion. So we had something on climate change, which has been a neglected topic in SASE for a long time. I did one years ago on called gray areas on irresponsible actions of companies, which I think has been a really big topic since then in many business and management journals, but we were quite early on this topic in SCR. So if you look back, there's a few things, these discussion forums, which I'm also happy to talk about if you have some ideas. Kind of thinking maybe I have more slides and things, but again, maybe it's a good time to pause a little bit and see what sort of questions are out there. So I have some of you submitted work. I'm not sure who we have in our audience exactly. So submitted work to SCR in the past, some of you. One of you has, I know. A question from Larry. Hello, Larry. On the question on interdisciplinarity as it pertains to peer review. Are reviewers primarily in the same discipline as the author? Are reviewers from other disciplines actively sought after? If the latter, any advice how to write and respond to reviewers from different disciplinary backgrounds? That's a great question. Very good. I think, so the process starts a little bit that the current workflow at SCR is that the initial submissions cross my desk as the chief editor. And after that first screening, I'll assign them to one of Nina or Puno or one of the other editors. And like everything, it's not a mechanical policy, but I would probably note the discipline of the author. And I would have a strong tendency probably to assign the editor in charge, like within discipline. So Bruno gets a lot of the economics papers. Bruno doesn't get 100% of the economics papers, and you also get other things, of course. But there's probably some kind of like, my gut feeling is that, okay, it's coming from a discipline and it's kind of fair and appropriate to have the peers from that discipline involved in that. So I try to make sure there is an in-discipline element, and then it's kind of then up to that editor to maybe, depending on the paper and depending on some serendipity of which reviewers are going to say yes, maybe one reviewer is going to be from outside the discipline, from someone on the topic, but from another discipline. But maybe that's my ideal. I would say, we would like to do that. It would be a good thing. I'm not sure we always do that, or we don't have a mechanical rule in that way. So that's the first part of your question, but I don't know if Puno or Nina want to add something on that. Then it's always a very interesting question how to respond to reviewers.
I wanted to say there's no intention on tricking anyone, right? The idea is to find people who are experts on the topic, and this is an interdisciplinary journal. And oftentimes by sending out requests, we get recommendations of other experts. So I want to clarify about that reviewer search process. There's a database that we have that we work with, which is the Manuscript Central platform. So if you're interested in reviewing, please put in your information. So that we can call on you, and it asks about topics. So as an editor, one could do a topical search and you get options, and you see a little bit as to whether people have reviewed for SCR. This is another point that perhaps not well known, that reviewers are scored. they get a little mark from editors as to whether they've provided a review that we thought was useful and constructive, and how timely they've done that. So this is across the board. Journals who use the Manuscript Central platform, those are the things that will be in the platform. And authors sometimes don't know that there is a bit also on the reviewing part. I will just say that this past year, it has been an unusual year in trying to be as compassionate as possible with the difficult circumstances and demands on people who might have committed to review but were not available. So I just want to take a pause. This is not something that just a blip. It's actual people's challenges in lives, both sides, and disparate impacts, as we've seen. So not everyone has been impacted the same, and we've seen the studies in that. So that's just my thing that I wanted to get out there. This is a human experience, and we try to make the journals publishing a human experience too. It's not just a platform. Now, the last thing I will say for the interdisciplinarity question is that, in fact, when we ask reviewers, we ask for qualitative comments. Those comments are both directly to the editors as confidential. Should reviewer choose to say something directly to the editor, they're called confidential comments to the editor. And again, sometimes new authors don't know that those comments could be quite different from the comments the author sees. So then there are comments that are forwarded to the author. And sometimes the tone is different. Sometimes it seems as if the review is so positive, but there was a reject. So there's often hard, we understand that. So we want to know their confidential comments, and then their comments that are sent out. And then there's a third part where we ask a reviewer to simply score. And again, this is Manuscript Central platform, is not something that we necessarily came up with. Although questions are about our journal, they're linked to the mission statement, and I'll post them in chat, what the questions are. We want to be very transparent. There's nothing to hide here. And one of the questions, now making this long story come to a conclusion, hopefully, is about how well does the paper speak beyond the confines of a discipline? So that if we have that as in some ways a criterion, then we want to be transparent that we want papers to be thinking of themselves as speaking beyond the discipline, which means there's likely that somebody outside of your discipline will be reading a paper as a reviewer. I hope that gives, it's a lot of information, but I hope this also gives an insight on the process. And I'll go ahead and post that.
But before I get to you, Petra, just maybe a short answer to the second part of the question about responding to reviewers, which is kind of like a big topic in itself. And, the kind of common thing is if the reviewers point a little bit in different directions, and then we try as editors as best we can maybe to acknowledge that. Maybe we give a steer, maybe we say, gee, we see the reviewers point in different directions, and like I understand, we understand you can't maybe do both. Like, someone says maybe chop out that part of the paper, and the other one says, oh, develop, that's the most interesting thing, develop it more, right? So, the editor's job is to kind of adjudicate between reviewers in advising authors how to carry forward with revision. And sometimes it's like you can't quite please everybody, and that kind of general issue gets maybe one level more when you're talking interdisciplinary audience, right? And I think all of us know there's no like interdisciplinary, it's like, is there like a perfect animal that can run like the cheetah and fly like the eagle and swim like the dolphin, you know, and you know, you're never really going to find that perfect animal who kind of can do it all. So again, you know, that's kind of a matter of, okay, what's the kind of most important thing in the paper, and trying to find like where that locates in a discipline that's really convincing and it's methodologically up to date, and then at least engagement with everything. And there is a role of, you know, even if a paper is published, you know, it's kind of like after that we have the you know, there's still like the public debate, and people will in their journal articles cite you or not cite you, or they'll cite you but disagree with you and say, you know, this wasn't done in that way. So publication's not the end of a process, but it's also like a beginning of like a next step of a process of debate. So we just try to be like reasonable, I don't know, for lack of a better word. Okay, I'd like Petra's had her hand, gets tiring holding up the hand so long, so you can relax.
Thank you. Yeah, my question actually relates, two questions, but the first one relates quite well to the final words of Nina, or maybe it's already a little bit answered by that, because I was wondering if working quantitatively with a method which maybe hasn't been used so much by now, to what extent one puts so the finding a good balance between putting the formulas into the paper versus putting them into the appendix, and really trying to find a good way to approach a broader audience by not making it not too technical, but find a wording which explains the method and the results in a way so that, yeah, everybody can understand it easily. So yeah, my question was about this balance, your experience and advice with regards to that balance. And my second question is more about the theoretical part. It's probably, one can extend it, it's probably more a general question in with regards to working interdisciplinary, because for me the problem often comes up to be, I mean, if I stay in my discipline, then I can be very concise, because so in economics I don't have to justify why I would just discuss skill bias technological change when I discuss the relation between education and labor income. But if my goal is to bring in sociology, then it broadens the whole discussion, and then it's the question about picking one particular theory to because this is really valuable to develop my argument. But if there are other 3, 4, 5 that I know that would be equally important, it's really hard to have a concise theoretical discussion. So yeah, so that's the other the branch where advice would be very welcome.
Sure. So the first part with quantitative things, I don't know. In a way that the digital, you know, now the journal's online only, but you know, the kind of intermediate thing was you'd have the print journal, and then you'd have these like online only appendices. And I think that's useful. There's kind of a lot of appetite recently for, you know, rigor and methodological explication, making results like replicable by other, you know, in other studies and so forth. And, you know, in some sense, that's very useful for the 2 to 5 people who are going to replicate your results, you know, next time. And it's good to have a documentation of it and so forth. And then for the people who are maybe more interested in the topic itself, you know, that's like maybe that's kind of a barrier for them to, you know, reading the paper. So it's again this kind of like art form, and if the method itself is the contribution of your paper, right? If that's like the mainline thing, then maybe I would relativize the answer a little bit and say, okay, and the first person to, I don't know, develop this technique, and it changes our understanding of a topic, right? So, but SER tends not to have so many of those, although we like to think we're pretty state of the art or good, and both qualitative and quantitative methods. So, you had a second part of your question, and my mind drifted slightly. It was
about the theoretical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Oh, we I think lost.
Yeah.
Petra. Maybe we wait with that, and maybe I stall by simply saying,
I'm back.
Oh, you are.
I had internet problems, but I'm back.
That's okay. We were wondering about the second part of your question, which was more about theoretical and in some ways what we take for granted in disciplines and what needs to be explained or not. So I think I will go back to our answer to Larry's question about interdisciplinarity. I would say to err on the side of just being clear. That is, you know, don't take things for granted that somebody in economics will know exactly and somebody won't, because I don't think readers generally react to authors writing as if, you know, it's just so obvious. It's good to define, right, and explain, but again, not belabor the point so the reader gets a sense that you're talking down to them, right? It's a thin balance of being clear and explaining what needs to be explained, especially if it's a disciplinary norm, but not, you know, explaining everything as if the reader won't already know. They've been picked because they are an expert on that topic. So, you know, how can you envision that reader that is broad, and what choices you need to make? Can you send it and circulate it to somebody, going back to my first answer to John's question, to read, and will they say, oh, you know, yeah, no, that part is just too technical, you have to explain it more because only an economist will understand it? And no, you won't get necessarily just economists assigned, even though you might be an economist, as we've already explained. So now, strike a good balance and have others read it, take distance from the paper, come back to it again with the eyes of, maybe I'm not an economist, how would I read this? And then, you know, make some edits. Clarity is key. I have to say that I've been sending back papers at the conditional accept stage where I say, you need to rewrite your abstract. Your abstract is just too jargony. You need to use your abstract to catch the reader. That is the first thing. We know you've done good work, but can you make it compelling? Can you rewrite your titles so that it is about the paper, not about, you know, a gazillion jargony words? So I think this is important to keep in mind. It's not simplistic. It's actually about clarity and about something being compelling. So I hope that helps a little bit.
John, please. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just interesting discussion. And my paper, by the way, is not too technical. However, I have another issue, is that I used a methodology that's not commonly used. Actually, while I was doing the PhD, the journal World Business, Columbia University, contacted me because I was one of the few people that knew about this methodology. I think it's more common in sociology than it is in finance, by the way, but it's the abductive and retroductive research strategies based on Paul Pierce, the philosopher from the US. And it's using a detective approach to creating a theory. And, you know, so essentially what I had. And what I'm concerned about is that maybe if I submit the paper, the methodology section, I can explain it, but it cannot take too long. However, I operationalized this methodology, which was not very clear when I was doing the PhD. It was very, all over the place. And so part of the PhD, I devoted a whole chapter, and it's quite extensive, and maybe a paper will come, a paper will come out of it on this methodology specifically. But I think that's going to be a difficult thing. I mean, if some, is the familiarity with the abductive and retroductive research strategies. I don't think they're high in any discipline, but so I think that's the dilemma. I could put, like you mentioned, the technical, I could put something online, maybe a draft version, of that chapter, maybe to sort of, as in the same vein as, say, the technical section. But I wanted to get your thoughts maybe on that.
Yeah. Nina, you wanna...
Well, quick thoughts will be what I say to graduate students, right? If it's something that other people have published on, references to those works that are not obscure when you describe your methodology will carry some legitimacy, and then that might be enough to do in the front end. And then whatever detail you want to provide can go into the appendix. We look at, for instance, not necessarily what you've mentioned, but the qualitative comparative analysis, and Charles Reagan is one of my colleagues at UC Irvine, a different kind of approach. And then what we would do is try to see, can we find a reviewer who's published, who's done work in this method and is familiar with it? Not maybe everyone out of the 3 reviewers that we usually try to get will be, but at least one will. Goes back to Bruno's comment before. You ask a reviewer mostly for their expertise, and you could write in the invitation that this is why we're asking them to comment on the paper. So I would say, unless it is something completely new that you've invented, that maybe try to publish that and cite yourself later on in the process. In reference to other people's work who've used that method will be good, and you should go ahead and do that, and then provide additional information that you think might be needed in an appendix.
Great, thank you.
John.
Yeah, hi.
Richard Swedberg writes quite extensively on PERS.
Okay.
And his methodology, and he proposes that for social theory building. So
okay, I'll take a look. Yeah, I have cited a few papers that have used it. They used it. It was one journal in Australia. They used it for health. So it was the abductive strategy. And actually, I reviewed a couple of papers from the Journal of World Business based on this methodology, but it was not very clear because there is no clarity. It's not that clear in general. So it's a difficult methodology, and that was one of the contributions I made, was to make it clear in the paper. I've seen it in I forget the name of the journal, but it's in sociology, Sociological Methods. It's a 4-star journal. There's a lot of what I did that's already sort of in there, but not put together yet, like in one comprehensive approach.
I will just add that abductive reasoning, right, reference to that is very common. So Ido Taveri, who's now the editor of Sociological Theory, has some writing on that himself. Yes. So, then if you see that a person has done a couple of things and they've published in prominent outlets, so it's not just some obscure reference, but it's a journal that has visibility, which means rigorous peer review, etc. Those are the kinds of references to your methods that we're looking for, if they exist. So I think you're on the right path.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
So what other burning questions do we have? We have a few people who haven't. Jaywook, Martin, Dylan, others maybe have some burning questions.
And I will say it's kind of free for all. I mean, in the kind of 20 minutes we have, we don't have to go until the full 10:30. But if it's something that's not specific to SER, that's more about journal publishing, writing. You have a group of people here who can weigh in, and then you could also invite Akos, Ronatash, and Alia Guseva, who are the new incoming chief editors, to say a few words if they have them on any kinds of questions you might have. John, go ahead. Your hand is still up anyway. But please unmute.
Okay, I'm back. All right. Just how strict is the word limit? I think it was 10,000 that I noticed, and can it go a little over, or you don't like that?
I mean, the goal is to have a paper that, going back to my clarity, is succinct enough, right? Yeah. So if it goes a little bit over, I mean, yeah. I think it's not that we will just automatically exclude it. I think you would get a message that it's over from the editorial assistant from Oxford University Press, Sarah King, who does processing. And then sometimes she might consult with the editors to say, is this okay? Can we still process it? I will say that in the end, the idea is to have a paper that is within those limits, simply because generally you can say what you need to say within those words. If it's something that requires, we have been flexible. We have published perhaps historical comparative research or qualitative research that has gone above that because there is legitimate need. But I would say this is a good guidance because it's a good writing strategy to try to think, can I trim some things that are not necessary? But then again, I think authors generally err on the conservative side and put a little bit more on, in the paper in the beginning. And I think that would be fine. We understand the paper will go through the review. Now, note that if your paper is too long and you get a reviewer who's already tired and thinks you're not getting to your point, that is not a good reaction you want from a reviewer. So it's not just us that we have some sort of a limit, but it's, shorter papers tend to be well received by reviewers who, have limited time.
I was just looking for the wording on the website, and I feel like, Nina, that I discovered a mistake, because I thought we agreed in our edit to this meeting some years ago a form of wording that, okay, 10,000 limit, but then longer papers could be accepted under. And this is gone from the website. I don't know. So sometimes OUP is mischievous, and I feel like it was on there, but so thank you for pointing out we have to police
sorry.
No.
We have so there I can put the website in the notes in the chat, but there are two paragraphs. One paragraph is quite strict about the word counting, so 6,000 to 10,000 words, but then later on it says that the manuscripts are generally no longer than 10,000 words, but there are, let me see, manuscripts should follow a clear line of argument. SER recognized that some of papers may require additional space for presentation and so forth. So in principle, there's some flexibility.
This tends to get a little bit into it's often a concern of qualitative and historical researchers who have ethnography, have a historical narrative, and it sometimes can be difficult, and it's kind of a debate. Well, okay, the journal's online, like, who cares about word limits? The internet's infinitely big, so we can have longer papers, but it's sort of about this, like, something like in proportional to the kind of contribution of things. So we kind of keep this, there's a general limit, and you will see quite a few papers of the qualitative ones where we agree. And it could be that, an editor then comes back and says, well, we kind of don't think it needs to be really so long. So before acceptance, trim it a little bit. People are not always willing to read the very long papers and so forth. So we just, again, try to keep it reasonable, but we kind of loosen this up from a mechanical, like iron barrier to something that gives a little bit of flexibility. But try to, as short as possible is good. Yeah.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing we had earlier, as I'm waiting for the one or two more burning questions that are out there, something I just touched upon this, like responding to reviewers, and it's something I like to kind of say a little bit more about, because I also observe at other journals and things that what happens. And we all want to get published. We all want to please the reviewers and all the stuff, but you are the author of your own paper, It's your name that's going to be on it, for good or bad, when it's out there. And you have to believe in your paper, right? And don't do things just to please the reviewers, and don't do things that if you think, oh, this guy completely misunderstood my paper, but I want to really get published, be careful here, and don't be afraid, and be courageous. And in your response to the reviewers, you can be very polite and very nice about it and everything. But you can say, thanks for the comment. This is what I understood, but no, thank you to this comment because such and such and such, right? And it's going to be the editor who makes the final decision on your paper. We don't just take the vote of the reviewers or give every reviewer a veto of the paper, right? So it's editor's job is kind of to make decisions, and the other part of our job is to make good decisions based on the kind of advice of informed peers of your work, right? So we kind of read the reviews, and it's like a pool of information for us to come to a decision, and we read all of that, like the replies that you give to the reviewers, and maybe a polite no thank you and clarification of why you're doing is like already enough to bring that reviewer on board. We know sometimes a reviewer can be very like stubborn, and maybe they're just not writing a very good review, and they're kind of like hammering on a point that's really not the right point for your paper. And it's a dialogue, but don't be afraid to, this is my paper, and we don't want like reviewers. We try to make so-called developmental reviews, meaning we want to improve the paper, we want to make it more understandable, we want to make it more rigorous, we want to like let the paper be as good as it can be. But we don't want like a bunch of reviewers to come on and say, well, interesting topic, but can you write a different paper, using a different methodology and a completely different theory? Because, I would like to read such a paper. And we don't want authors to say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and charge off. And because frankly, I see this a lot. I work in a business school, and there's quite a pecking order of prestigious journals, and people just send stuff there, and they kind of have this attitude, well, yeah, I'll just get an R&R, and I'll just kind of do whatever the reviewers, you know, wanted. And I had a co-author, which will forever remain nameless, but, you know, kind of said like, was writing the review, and I'm saying, no, but, you know, see, in the last paper we wrote, we argued against that theory, and now we can't say we're building on that theory because the reviewer likes that theory, you know. And I got really pissed off about this. But, you know, so I'm really a fan of like authors, you know, politely, you know, engaging, and if it's a good point, bring it on. But if you feel it's not the right point for you, don't put it in, and be your own author, be courageous. And once or twice that might mean you don't get in the journal of your dreams, and then you'll get in a better journal, you know, the journal that's right for your work, I guess, you know. So yeah, that's just important hobby horse statement from me. But sometimes I think comes up a lot, like how to deal with, how to negotiate the review process. So when I teach writing course to, you know, in Berlin, this is often the mysterious thing, you know, how to do that skillfully. So, yeah, what other topics can we discuss with you? Philip Thompson must have a question.
Well, there's one question stirring my mind, but going back to something that Bruno said some while ago, which was that the opinion of economists on quantitative papers is very much valued when papers come from different disciplinary backgrounds. And I mean, there are different methodological preferences in each of the disciplines that papers might come from. I myself am not a trained economist. This maybe also relates to what you just said. So if I use a method that is commonly used in my field and that I feel comfortable with using, and I get a review, a supposed economist, I guess, who is asking for a method that is a standard in their field, the gold standard to study problem XYZ. To what degree, you know, is it a good idea to try to cover all of the methodological bases and please everyone? I mean, it could be reverse as well, but I guess what you end up with is maybe a huge appendix that implements you know, a wide range of different model specifications to please the methodological preferences of different disciplinary scholars. Or can I just say no?
There's some things, you know, like in my own research, I kind of got to an impasse in a particular project because I had, you know, like, you know, different business firms in countries. And then if you think in terms of like sociological journals, you'd use like a multi-level model. And then, you know, in a kind of business school, like type of journal, you know, you'd be like, oh, you need like an instrumental variable to, you know, control for endogeneity. And then I spent like a year trying to figure out how to put an instrumental variable into a multi-level model. And I kind of talked to a lot of people and came to the conclusion that, you know, no one's, it could be done, but if you programmed some equations to do it, but no one's ever done it simply because these two worlds never meet, you know, because the people who do one would never do the other, and you know, vice versa. And I don't know, maybe I kind of dropped this topic, and maybe I'm saying something that 3 of you have done in your most recent paper, so please email me about that later. But yeah, there are some kind of like, I don't know, different, I don't know, it's like habits, like a habitus of different subdisciplines in terms of like kind of standard expectations of methods, and that kind of reflect different assumptions and concerns about how to do things. And no tool is perfect, but I think if we the tool we choose, we should do it, get the best possible result from that tool, like using it as well as possible according to the standards of that tool. And then there's a limitation to any methods that, as Bruno said, someone can, if it's easy, an easy thing to do, they can just get the data and write their own paper that's, you know, better than that paper, and we improve upon research, and that we improve our understanding as a community by these many papers getting written with different methods and so forth. But it's probably not reasonable for one person to do every possible different method and put it in the appendix or something. It'd be tough. Yeah. So we have a quick reminder that our session is scheduled to end in 15 minutes, which was a few minutes ago, but we have a few, I think about 8 minutes left. If there's a last question, comment, remark. And I would slowly maybe wrap up our session. Yeah, I can stay here for another minute or two if you have a very, like, I don't know, question about your particular paper. Maybe you didn't want to ask in the big forum or something. But otherwise, thank you for coming, and hope you have a great SASE conference ahead. And I look forward to seeing your best work submitted to SCR later this year, or maybe my successors will see your work next year. Okay, so thanks so much to everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. Echoing that. And if you're presenting a paper, you already have a draft. So SCR might be a good outlet, because SCR, after all, is the official journal of the Society for the Advancement of Socioeconomics, and this conference is a great way to get papers to us. Have a good conference. Thank you for coming.